Okay, hello, good evening, everyone. This is quite a different scenery than you see usually because today it's not only me being here, but I have also a very special guest that I'm going to introduce to you in just a matter of seconds. And also, since my guest is a native speaker, I'm going to be talking English too. So let me know that you're here. Please say hello to us. Say that you can see us, you can hear us. Everything's working just fine. We need this confirmation to be able to start our today's webinar. Okay, so if it's all right for you, we'll really appreciate you letting us know. And today we welcome you on a webinar that is dedicated to Outcomes Third Edition. And my special guest is our Outcomes Third Edition ambassador. This is Glenn Standish.
Hello.
Glenn, you can say hello. Exactly.
Good evening, Ola, and good evening, everybody. Nice to be here.
Yeah. And today I'm going to talk less, hopefully, and I'm going to give just this tiny space to Glenn so you could hear somebody else talking except for me. Okay, there are people saying hello to us. You can see us, you can hear us. So I guess we can start. What do you think, Glenn?
Absolutely. Let's go. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so before I allow Glenn to introduce himself, I'll just tell you what you can expect today from us. We've gathered all here today to talk about Outcomes Third Edition. So we'll try to explain to you what are the differences between the second edition and the third one. I have a slight surprise for you in that matter. And we're going to show you what this book looks like inside, page by page. Okay. And in the end, we have this great surprise that was prepared for you by Glenn, but you have to stay till the very end if you want to get it. Okay, Glenn, so the floor is yours. Tell us something about yourself, please.
Thank you, Ola. Yeah, well, my name is Glenn Standish, and I'm the Director of Studies here at International IH Toruń, here in Poland. And I have been the Director of Studies for about 11 years now. Yeah, despite my British accent, I am very proud to say I was born in New Zealand. And when anybody asks me where I'm from, I always say I'm from New Zealand because it's more of a conversation starter. So yeah, I'm from New Zealand. And I have been teaching English for 21 years now, mainly here in Poland, but obviously sometimes in the UK and Ireland as well, but mainly based here in Poland. And for the last 5-6 years, we've been predominantly using Outcomes, at least the second edition here at International House. So I'm a big fan, yes.
And this is why we've invited Glenn to be our ambassador, because they've been teaching with Outcomes for like forever. Okay, but also, Glenn, you've said somewhere in your bio, I know because I've read it, that you have visited 50 plus countries. Yes,
I think it's 59. It's going to be 60 in February next year because I'm going to be visiting Korea for the first time. So Korea will be my 60th country, yes.
Okay, I'd say that's a score of a real traveler and a proud user of National Geographic learning books. Okay, great. You told us that you've been using Outcomes second edition for the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What is so great about the series?
Oh, I think it's just really fresh and really interesting. And yeah, it really engages the students, the learners. They find it fascinating. And the content's really interesting, and there's never a dull moment with Outcomes. And of course, as we know, it uses the lexical approach, which I'm quite a big fan of. Of course, there is focus on grammar, but the language really comes from the vocabulary, from the lexis, and I find that a very interesting approach.
Yeah, that's the one thing. But what I really love about Outcomes, because this is also the series that I've been working with for a couple of years, is that your students instantly start talking. And this is amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had the opportunity to work with Outcomes beginner, but this is really astonishing how fast you students start talking because they get so much input, so much vocabulary that they can use. And yeah, I think this is what's really empowering students and allow them to be less afraid of learning English and do it with a real pleasure. And this is why probably so many teachers chooses outcomes. By the way, if you'd like to share with us why do you like outcomes and whether you use it or not, or maybe not yet, you're welcome to do it on chat. This chat is specially designed for you. We're having okay, yeah, hacks and kisses from Wrocław, thank you. We see it constantly. We're checking your comments. So if you'd like to ask us a question or you'd like to comment on something we're talking about, feel free to do it. Okay, we'll try to answer everything.
We'll do our best, yes.
Yes, we'll try. Plus, we have Przemek Ogrodowczyk on chat, so we can use him as well. He will be able to answer your more complicated questions. Maybe we don't want to do it on air. No, I'm joking. We can answer everything, hopefully. All right, so the third edition. Glenn, you were among the lucky ones who has seen Outcomes third edition, I think even before I have, really. So what do you think?
Yeah, it was quite some time ago. I was, invited to have a preview and share my thoughts and opinions, which is great that National Geographic did that, because obviously, they do, they're very interested in obviously getting feedback from the people who actually teach from the books. And obviously, as we've been using Outcomes for many years here, I guess we were a prime candidate. So it was great that National Geographic did ask for my opinion. And I also did ask my teachers as well, because, they also use the book, some of them more than I do. So, I asked for their opinions as well. And yeah, I mean, I honestly think National Geographic has really answered a lot of our, the feedback and the areas that we wanted to focus on. One thing, for example, that the second edition, the writing was always kind of shoehorned into the back of the book.
Yeah.
And, and sometimes, myself included, we kind of forgot to include the writing in lessons because
guilty as charged.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what's great about the third edition is that now the writing is actually embedded into each and every unit. So I mean that's great. So there's no excuse now for teachers. They're gonna have to teach the writing for sure.
Yeah, so that's a great solution for us, people who need to watch over the teachers too, to fulfill the whole curriculum. Yeah, that's true. By the way, I love what you said about National Geographic Learning listening to teachers, because this is exactly what we try to do. You know very well that this is my job to make sure that you guys are happy, that you guys are equipped with all the materials and knowledge that would allow you to run successful classes with NGL books. And we're always trying to pass your opinions and your remarks on to the people who actually can do something with that. And we've been talking to Hugh Dellard, the author of Outcomes third edition and the second and the first, obviously. And he told us that they really included the feedback from teachers around the world to make the series even better, which is great. And that means that really telling us what is wrong or what you'd like to have improved really matters to us. By the way, Glenn and I were thinking about how to talk about the changes in the new edition, in the third edition, and then I came up with this idea that there is no better person to talk about the changes in the third edition than the author himself. So I approached Hugh Dellard and asked him to record a short video for you guys, so that you can hear from his own mouth what changes did they include. So if you don't mind, I'll just let Hugh do the talking, okay, for about a minute, and he'll introduce you to the major changes, and then Glenn and I will talk about those minor ones and the ones we like or we dislike, okay? So let's do it. Ladies and gentlemen, Hugh Dellard, especially for you.
Greetings from a rather cold and wet and grey North London morning. My name's Hugh Dellard, and along with my writing partner, Andrew Walkley, I'm responsible for the Outcomes series, published by National Geographic Learning. As you will probably know, we've recently completed a third edition of the series, and we're both very pleased with it and very proud of it. We hope you enjoy using it with your students, and we look forward to your comments. We feel it's the best of the 3 editions we've done so far. And as you'll probably know, we've made quite a few changes from 2nd edition. We've refreshed and updated the texts and the contents where relevant. We've added in plenty of opportunities for teachers to encourage students to engage in a bit of mediation, as you know, recommended by the Common European Framework guidelines now. We've sort of tightened and clarified the key vocabulary to make it clearer for teachers and students what they're expected to learn at any given point. We've added in this new understanding fast speech feature, which basically helps students drill down into the stream of sound and helps them decode the acoustic blur of spoken language. And we've added in entirely new video spreads as part of the review sections. And these serve a twin function. On one level, they're revision. Students hear other people having conversations they've had already. On another level, they're exposure to English in its full variety. Students get to exposure to all kinds of different accents, native and non-native. And hopefully, again, this will help them to process and decode the range of Englishes out there. If I was going to give one quick...
Yeah, and I'm going to stop here because I want to save the rest for later. Because Hugh did not only talked about the changes, but he also gave you some tips that I'm going to save for later. Right, okay, Hugh, I'm sorry, I'm going to remove you. There he is. There we are, actually. Okay, Glenn, so what is your favorite change about the new edition?
Well, I also like, I mean, I have the book right in front of me. There you go, something I prepared earlier, the paper version. And I really like how the grammar boxes are now defined in like these like sort of like bluey green boxes. It's just a little bit easier on the eye, you know, just a little subtle change like that. But it is easy on the eye. Of course, you know, the grammar references are still there and everything. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's much more, the whole content is much more up to date. And, you know, I mean, that's a great thing, really. But I would say, going back to what I said earlier, I think the one thing that I love the most about the new edition is the writing. And here we go, right here for Unit 1, we've got the section on giving advice. And it's literally, you know, after Unit 2C, it goes straight into the writing, and you know that's great. You know that for me is like, you know, brilliant.
Yeah, we're going to show you the whole unit page by page in a moment. But first, one more thing, because Glenn, you said you have this paper copy, right?
I do indeed. Yes.
Okay, so I guess, but correct me if I'm wrong, but there's one huge difference between your copy and mine.
Okay.
You know what that is?
No, but you're going to tell me.
Yes. Of course I'm going to. Okay, can you open the first page, please? You know this.
What, the inside? Yeah. Oh, yes. That's signed by Hugh Della.
This is, yeah. It's a copy signed by Hugh Della, and we managed to ask him to sign 2 copies for us while we saw him on IATF this year. And those 2 copies that we have are going to be prizes during our NGL Day in Warsaw on 2nd December. So if you guys are not signed up yet, maybe the perspective of winning one of the 2 existing copies signed by Hugh would be rewarding enough, perhaps.
Yeah, do sign up. I'm going to be there myself, and some of my teachers as well are going to be there.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, whether you going to be there. I'm glad that you
absolutely. No, I'm really looking forward to it. 2nd of December in Warsaw. Yeah.
We're also going to present outcomes to you. We're going to talk about outcomes a lot, and those 2 copies are going to be given away by us to the lucky winners. Okay, Ivona says that I'm lucky. Okay, those 2 copies are for you guys, but I have my very own personalized by you. Yeah, so I'm lucky that way. If you're going to see us on December the 2nd, you can let us know. I'm wondering how many of you are actually going to be there. If you're not there, then it's a great time for you to join us. You can see the link here now on the screen. It's still, I'd say, a couple of days to join before we finally close the list. But we have promised to show the outcomes third edition page by page. So this is actually exactly what we're going to do. And we also like to give you a couple of tips, because why not? If you're here spending time with us, why should you leave just with the vision of how outcomes looks like if you can get some teaching tips that can help improve your teaching. So starting with unique opener. This is something that is common for all the National Geography learning books. We always begin with a huge, beautiful photography that is supposed to spark the discussion between your students. There are not many changes here except for the general layout. The only thing that Hugh and Andrew decided to change is this is the way that they present what is going to happen in the unit. They went for more communication approach. So we're not talking in this unit you're going to learn present perfect, but we go more for in this unit you will discuss different festivals and carnivals and etc. etc. Do you, Glenn, like working with photographs? How do you?
Of course, yeah. I think visuals are a fantastic aid in the classroom. And also like personalization as well. Personalized images often, yeah, you might say it's a bit egocentric, but often I like to show pictures from, for example, from my weekend and things like that are always personalized. And in fact, today I've just literally taught to B2 level teen classes, and I was showing pictures of my weekend to the students because it generates interest, and they do like to talk and ask me questions as well. So yes, it might sound very egocentric, but also you are getting them to talk and ask questions.
Yeah, but I think that those photographs are so beautiful and so filled with content that we can discuss, that they are really giving this necessary thing for students to think about what they're going to discover throughout the unit. But it's also great speaking activity. For example, I love giving my students some challenges about the photographs, because I really believe that there's so much more to them than just answering the questions. So I often, for example, divide them into pairs, and I ask them to create 4 or 5 questions about the photo. If I am mean this day, I also suggest a couple of question words that they have to use. If I have a good day, I don't. That depends. And then I ask them to write those questions down and exchange with other couple, with other pair, so that they have to first create questions and then answer the questions that the other pair created for them. And it's a great activity that really gets them talking, that really makes them practice creating questions. Have you got any tip for our teacher here?
I really like your tip, your suggestion there, because it is so student-centered, but at the same time student-generated. They're the ones coming up with the questions, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. Another approach, and quite a simple way, is literally, get the students to open the books to the page, and then get them very quickly to try to remember as much of the image as possible. So, always give a time limit, like 20, 30 seconds. And I want, look, try to remember what you can see. And then after 20 seconds, close the books. And, you, the teacher, can ask them questions about what they remember, sort of like, okay, so, who was the person standing at the front in the foreground? What was the color of their blouse that they were wearing? Where was the picture taken? So again, it's kind of student-centered, and it's challenging because, they have looked at the image, but they have closed it. And
they have to activate their memory.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's so many structures that they have to use, because they have to think about what they've seen. They have to speculate a little bit. Yeah. So it's also very vocabulary and structure rich exercise.
Yeah. And of course, the technique of speculation is very important. For example, for exams, English exams like first certificate and the advanced, exams. They have to speculate about pictures. So that's a very good technique to do. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, so as we said, every unit starts with a beautiful picture that you can see, and you can use it to encourage your students to talk, but also to use it in a different way, the way that you like. If you have any tips that works for you in your classes, you are welcome to share in a comment section. By the way, Glenn, I forgot, and you haven't reminded me. We're gonna have to talk about it later, because one of the major changes about the third edition is that it's finally available in Spark.
Yes.
And yes, and we were talking about this backstage, because we know that Spark is a great platform that enables teachers to have completely new experience using the books. But we also know that it can be pretty challenging. And actually, Glenn, your school is one of those who had some, let's say, difficulties embarking on a Spark adventure. But how do you see now?
I mean, we're one of the first schools, I like to say we're pioneers. We're one of the first schools to actually be using the new third edition, and we have been using it since September. And of course, there was a few little teething issues when it came to Spark, logging in and things like that. But, we have overcome that. And I think, I think Spark is a great idea, and I think it's a great platform, but it is, in its infancy. And I think, with time, it's going to improve, and, people are going to use it and going to enjoy it. I mean, I did ask one of my teachers just now, he's actually upstairs on the first floor teaching from the pre-intermediate outcomes third edition right now as we speak. And I asked him, can you give us some positive feedback at Spark? And he said, Spark is very good for setting assignments and setting homework for the students. And, he really liked it from that point of view. Yes.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know what the Spark is our platform that enables you to have all your courses in one place, where you have your interactive ebook that you can display during online classes or classes or face-to-face classes, where you have embedded all the you have all the video, all the audio embedded that you can use, all the extra activities, and all the additional teacher materials that you need. It's all there in one platform. You have one password, one login, and you can also invite your students to download their app. They can use it at home in their own free time, and they also get access to a lot of extra practice materials. I'm going to show you a couple of possibilities that Spark has during our presentation, but this is not the major thing for today. So I'm glad that you guys are enjoying Spark, even though it's been a struggle. But let's move on, because after unit opener, we have this first section, 2A in our case. And what do we have here? From the new things that we didn't have in the second edition are those in this lesson use, so lesson goals that the authors decided to add. And I think it's a great great help for the teachers.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Ola. I think, having that is great, because often students, they come away from classes and they don't actually know what they've learned,
What was the purpose, right, of today's
exactly class? And one tip I always told my teachers to do is actually, just in the top right hand corner of the whiteboard, just bullet point the stages. I'm not saying rewrite your lesson plan on the board, but just bullet point the basic stages of what's going to happen and what are the goals of today's lesson. And that way, the student can see exactly what's happening. Another good tip is that the teacher can actually tick off as they're going through the stages as well and the goals. So yeah, I think having it in the book on the page is brilliant.
Exactly. Plus, it really helps you to build your lesson, right, according to it, and your students can see what they're about to achieve. And I think it really works well for the motivation.
Very much so, yeah.
I'm a huge fan of the solution. I'm so glad they did it. It was really maybe not a game changer, but really something that adds this, slight difference to the whole experience. Okay, generally the first section, so the A in each unit, is concentrated on conversation practice. So the whole point of all the other exercises is to get you to this point when you can have a meaningful conversation about a topic. And to get there, you have this vocabulary section, then usually some listening, and grammar if it's relevant for the conversation that we're about to have. And another change that has appeared in the third edition is that Hugh and Andrew decided to change the layout of the vocabulary section so that it's more clear to show the key vocabulary better, because they've told me, Hugh has told us some time ago that they've heard a lot of complaints about from teachers about not really knowing what the key vocabulary in each unit is. So now it has changed, it is more clear, more concise, so it should be much easier to work with. By the way, Glenn, how do you work with the vocabulary? Because this is something interesting, especially
that's one of my favourite parts, teaching vocab. Yeah, and one of the joys about outcomes is it really pushes the students for expanding their vocabulary bank, especially the high levels. But as you mentioned earlier, even the low levels, like beginner outcomes, it really is pushing students. So I think, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, it's using the lexical approach. So I do honestly think the vocabulary section is probably one of the most important parts. It's great, as it is in the book. But obviously, what I would do when I'm teaching vocab is always board the language or the chunks of language on the board, and always write the part of speech. I think that's very important. In brackets, what it is. But the problem is, no matter, how, if the students are writing it down, recording it on, in their notebooks, it's just going to go through one ear out of the other. So it's, really important to constantly consolidate the vocabulary as well. So, fine, you learn it, on page 16, but you do need to constantly consolidate that language as well. Have you got any tips for consolidating vocab, Ola?
I always do. I love working with vocabulary, and I love the approach that Outcome has, because it is always presented in context. We don't really learn vocabulary, just some words randomly picked and it's just given to your students, and they don't really know what to do with them. This is the easiest way to forget it, to be honest.
Yeah, of course, and its contextualization is so important. Yeah.
Exactly. Context is king. I always say that. You know that. If you attend my trainings, you know that. Context is king. So what I love doing with my students is that asking them about their own examples. To personalize the learning process. So once we conclude with all the activities that the book shows and the book presents, we can play a game. And I love simple solutions. So I usually go for nuts and crosses, if that's possible. So again, I divide my students into pairs. I ask them to, draw the grid for nuts and crosses, and I ask them to choose by themselves 9 words from the list from what they've learned today. So actually, they are responsible for the words that they've chosen. They cannot really complain about it. And then I ask them to play. And if they want to, put an X or put an O into the grid, they have to create their very own sentence, putting the word into the context. So in this way, they're creating their own vocabulary, their own sentences using the vocabulary they've learned. But there's also this game aspect that they enjoy. Which makes it completely.
We do I've done something similar, with student-generated bingo as well. Where they come up with their own phrases, and it all goes into a bag, and you're pulling them out. But going back to consolidating vocab and recording vocab, here at IH Toruń we have what is known as word bag cards, and we board all the words on the board, but then we go around, give cards to the students, and they fill in these cards, with the word, with the part of speech, with the definition, and just like you mentioned earlier, very importantly, that they write an example sentence in context, of course, but don't just copy the sentence. Come up with their own. And these cards then go in a bag that the teacher brings every lesson. And, you know, obviously the bag is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and heavier. And you've got loads of cards and, you know, words in there to play games, you know, like Backs to the Board, Pictionary, Taboo, and as you mentioned, you know, Noughts and Crosses and other games as well. So, you know, there's no excuse as well that, you know, teachers run out of ideas and still has 10 minutes left. You know, you've always got a word bag activity, you know, as a filler. So, you know, that's something we do. And I think it's so important to, yes, you know, consolidate the language of the vocab. So, yeah, there's some tips there.
Okay. Yeah, I think, and probably I know, that if your students create personalized sentences with new vocabulary, they will remember it better. I mean, the more personalized they are, the better chance that they will remember it. So always encourage your students to create their very own sentences. It will really, really pay off.
Don't just copy. Don't copy from the book.
No, never do that. Okay, let me show you another great things that you can find in Outcomes third edition in this section. Here in this blue box, or maybe purple box, we have listening marked as P. This P means that this exercise is concentrating on pronunciation. So in this one, you students will have to listen to the vocabulary and then practice saying it. This is a novelty that the authors introduced in this section. Again, if you were listening to Hugh, you've heard that he said that they've added fast speech. And this is where you can find it, labeled as FS. So this is where you listen and you try to understand fast speech, as in a matter of extracts from the conversation. You can write the words that you hear. You can add your very own ideas to that. We'll talk about listening and ideas about that later. What else? Mediations. They're marked as M, and they are simply great exercises that will help you students to build up their confidence in using English, and that they will allow your students to talk in a meaningful way, to repurpose language, and to use it in a deeper level. Glenn has said a couple of words about the grammar and the way it is presented. So Glenn, would you come back to the topic since we're here?
Yes, yeah. Just, you know, the way it's presented now, it's in the bold sort of blue box like so. And, you know, yeah, the grammar is often contextualized. It's presented in context, and it's usually connected as well with, you know, maybe with the reading or a vocab section as well. So it's not just an isolated grammar point, but it's a, you know, a key grammar point, and obviously it's a grammar point, and in this case, you know, which is important in the B2 you know, CFR level. So, you know, they are very important grammar points. But yeah, there's always, you know, like, you know, control practice exercises, and also, you know, lots of exercises available, obviously on the Spark platform as well. But there's also, you know, in the workbook as well, lots of control practice exercises. So even though you might look at it and think, oh, you know, there's not many control practices here, don't worry. National Geographic does provide a lot. So
yeah. It's not about, you know, filling in those exercises. It's about using it in context again, and about, you know, using it in conversation. And as I said, this whole section really leads us to developing conversation. And this is what we're really heading to. By the way, about the grammar, there's this great grammar section in the back of the book that is a bit more extensive. If this is something that you need, give it a second.
That's where the control practice exercises will be.
Okay. Yeah. So we had relative clauses over there, and this is more extensive explanation, plus 1, 2, 3, 4 exercises that go with it. So don't worry about not having enough. Trust me, you really do have a lot of input to use. Right. Now let me try to come back to where we were. Oh, I think it was here. Okay, so let's say we have concluded our first section and move on to the next one, B. And actually, this is the one that we're really going to discuss. Because, because why, Glenn, exactly? What's the reason?
Well, because I do have a little prize, well, a little gift for you. It's not a prize, it's a gift. I have created a lesson plan based on these 2 pages. It's a full lesson plan, and there's also a PowerPoint, because I'm a big fan of using PowerPoint slideshows. Actually, I don't want to take the full credit, because I must mention one of my teachers, Paul Caudry. He did create this PowerPoint as well. He's actually taught this lesson himself with his upper intermediate class. And and then I wrote the lesson plan. So yeah, it's a collaborative effort. But yeah, that's our gift. We're going to be giving it to you guys at the end. So do stay around for the QR code. And yeah, it's using the reading section and talking about carnival festivals and things like that. And we tried to jazz it up and make it interesting. And there's a few tips and advice that I've given in the lesson plan as well. So please do have a look at them.
Yeah, so it's worth staying till the end, I'd say. Definitely. Okay, but let's talk about this reading section. By the way, about I think 60% of text in Outcomes Third Edition is brand new. They're changed completely. So it's also something to look for in the third edition. What do we start with? Again, lesson objectives. Then some vocabulary that will introduce the topic, but will also help your students to understand the text better and to have a meaningful conversation about it. And of course, reading comprehension activities, and some speaking, along with beautiful, beautiful pictures. So Glenn, is reading something that your students enjoy?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think they enjoy it more than writing, and they shouldn't. They shouldn't hate writing. But I think writing's branded as a bit of a negative thing. But no, they do enjoy reading. But often, teachers, and myself included in the past, have kind of just set the reading for homework. It's very well just like all right, read page 18, 19. Answer the questions, and then we'll go through it for homework. And I think that's so wrong as well. I mean, obviously there is a time and place to do that, don't get me wrong, but I think it's also very important to do it in class as well. It could be a time reading activity, for example. You could be focusing on reading for gist, skimming, scanning, and both obviously these techniques for skimming and scanning are meant to be very quick. It's meant to be a very short timed activity. And I think you can really, control the students and do that in a proper environment in the classroom, as opposed to at home, they can take forever to read it, So I think it's really important. Sorry, somebody at the door.
Typical, yeah.
Yeah, I just ignore them.
And I was waiting for my cat, and then there's someone at your door. I mean, I feel so much better now. Off topic, we had this conversation in a backstage before we started, that I'm afraid that my cat was going to make a scene, because as you know, she usually does. And then, not mine.
Yeah.
So thank you, Glenn. Yeah,
That's okay. That's okay.
No. Great. Yeah, but I came across a lot of students who actually do not enjoy reading, and they're saying that all those texts are very long. Yes, they're interesting, but they're very long. And teachers actually expect us to read the whole thing out loud.
Yeah. What is that reading out loud? Why? Why get the students to read out loud? I don't understand that.
I think there are different approaches to the matter. Actually, I sometimes encourage my students to read out loud, but not the whole text, just part of it. It's really interesting to hear them reading something. But I agree that reading the whole thing out loud on your own could be quite tiresome. So maybe that's not the way to go. Anyway, what can we do to make reading a little bit more approachable for our students?
Well, I mean, in the lesson plan that you're going to see later, you'll see that I've actually taken these 3 texts and turned it into a jigsaw reading activity. In case you're not sure what a jigsaw reading activity is, it's basically you give each text to, you divide the students into groups of 3, A, B, C, and you give each, one text. For example, the first one could be A to A's, and they read it themselves. But it's very important that they make notes as well as they read. So they read and then they can make notes. And then the idea of the jigsaw, you bring the 3 ABC students together, and using their notes, they retell what they've read to the other partners, to the other students. And so, that's important why they need to make notes, because they're kind of like, they're reading and then they're using their notes to retell instead of just like looking at the text again and reading and regurgitating in front of them. So that's a very good skill to do as well.
Yeah, and that's the part that I actually love. Students taking the content and repurposing it. Yeah. That's mediation, 100% mediation in it. And this is what we love. This is what outcomes really is about. Yeah, I would also encourage you to go back to those texts after you read them on the next classes, or wait 2 or 3 weeks to come back to it. And then what you can do is to erase the key vocabulary. There's always key vocabulary that's bolded in a text. So what you can do, simply erase it, and ask your students to put it back and see whether they can do it. You can also erase the whole sentences. You can try to scramble the order of the sentences in 1 or 2 paragraphs and see whether they can rebuild it somehow. This is a great exercise to activate memory, but also to help them work on reading structures and to help them work on their language, because again, this is something that they have to go back to. So that would be my tip for the reading practice. I don't think I have to mention that those texting outcomes are really interesting, meaningful, and I wouldn't say that they are boring to students. So if you feel like they're long, because this is what I've heard from multiple teachers, that yes, outcomes great, but the texts are so long, don't feel discouraged, because they're really, really nice to work with.
And they're very interesting, as you said, and they're usually about different cultures and countries, and it's of great interest to the students, definitely.
Yeah, true. Okay, so let's look into the next section. Next section, which is usually about listening. And again, lesson objectives, a couple of speaking activities that will help to get you started, to warm your students up. And then there's listening. Usually we listen twice and we have 2 different exercises, and then we have a couple of questions to work on, usually in pairs or in groups, that would also help students to discuss the content of the listening. It is followed by grammar, usually different one that we had before, and some speaking task. Now, this speaking task that you can find at the end of this C section usually tries to gather up everything that we covered during the unit. So you can actually use it as a wrap-up speaking activity that will help students revise and reflect on what they've done. And then there's this great new section called My Outcomes. This is an approach to self-assessment for students, where they can sit back for a second. Maybe I'll make it a bit larger for you so that you can see what I mean. Students can look back at what they've done in this unit and decide whether there were some interesting things, whether they've learned something useful, which aspect they feel like they need to practice more, and how they can learn something else, how they can use the language that they've gained in their everyday life. So this is great. You know that I'm a huge fan of self-assessment. So I'm very thrilled that Hugh and Andrew decided to incorporate this into the 3rd edition of Outcomes. But back here to the top, listening. Glenn, how do you feel about listenings during classes?
Yeah, I mean, it's very important to do in class. Again, it's something that's got to be done in class as opposed to really done at home. Again, I mean, it's funny because my B2 teenagers, certainly when it comes to the tests, they really don't want to have listening tests, because we alternate the skills, every unit when we come to do our tests, our unit tests. So we alternate it between, the receptive skills between listening and reading. And my students always want, Glenn, have the reading test. Let's not have a listening test, So there is some fear when it comes to listening. as well. So maybe you're right. Maybe not all. It's just, you know, same approach earlier. Maybe not all students like listening.
I think that's really the minority of students like listening, and this is primarily due to the fact that listening activity requires you to sit still and do nothing but listening for a second. This is very difficult for young people nowadays. It's difficult for me as well, I have to admit it.
Yes.
Attention spans are quite short, and I have to say that after listening for something for 2 minutes, I'm instinctively trying to find myself something to do. And the phone, a pencil, writing something. I'm getting distracted easily, and this is what I think is happening to our students as well. But that doesn't mean that we don't really have to practice, because listening is actually a very important skill, and it helps students to learn language better. So what can we do to make listening better, more approachable?
Well, we need to make, you know, I mean, one idea is to give a sense of purpose and make the whole reason why you're listening, you know, meaningful. You know, instead of just like, right, you know, press the play and let's just listen for the sense, you know. So I think, you know, it's very important to try to make it meaningful. So one idea is, you know, get the students to, before they even, you know, approach listening, just try to predict what the listening is going to be about, what's going to be in the content, come up with some questions themselves, again, student generated, and then they can listen to check their predictions. You know, that's a very simple technique. But again, it's a bit more personalized as well.
Yeah, sure, because you have to confront your ideas with what you've actually heard. So it's also very nice. What I like doing with my students is giving them something to do, since this is what they obviously need. So instead of just giving them the exercise, okay, oh look, this is exercise 2. You have to answer the question, or you have to match the speaker with the idea. I asked them to close the book so that they wouldn't be tempted to look into the exercise, and I asked them to take notes. And I even allow them to exchange notes if they want to. They can take notes together in pairs if this is working for them. And then I ask them to open the book and do the exercise based not on what they hear at the moment, but on what they've taken into, what they have in their notes. So this actually forces them to listen to everything, not exactly to those specified things that they find in the exercise, because they didn't really know what the exercise is going to be about. They didn't know it yet. They take notes. So this is, again, note-taking skill, also very necessary. And they're kind of forced to decide what is the most important aspect, what they want to write down. They usually enjoy it, especially if I allow them to compare notes later. It's kind of a cheating activity where they can do it, and it works really well for me. Maybe it will also work for your teenagers if this is the age group that you're teaching.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there, Ola. I mean, that was going to be my second tip. You know, you predicted, yeah. There you go.
Great minds think alike.
Yes, great minds think alike. Exactly. So no, you're absolutely right. You know, close the book, get them to take notes, and then obviously later they can, you know, even before they look at the actual exercise in the book, they, you know, they listen and, you know, make notes. I think that's a very good technique.
Yeah. So if you're afraid of listening and you see those faces of your students that are not very happy about what you've just told them, which is today we haven't listening, then just try to find something that would excite them and give them something to do. Okay. Plus, usually these listening activities in outcomes are really enjoyable. We can listen to different interesting things, different accents, different speakers. That makes it, I think, even more interesting and not boring.
That's what Hudella mentioned as well in the video earlier, is about, you know, having non-natives and native speakers as well, you know, getting the students exposed to a variety of accents, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, and this is the thing that we have in the majority of National Geographic learning books, because we really believe that the future is going to be not about the British or American accent. It's going to be about, you know, the global accent that you can find across the world. And personally, I think it's great that the young people nowadays have this opportunity to have contact with different accents, because this is what they're going to be working with, not with people who can speak perfect English, but with people from Scotland, from people from China, from Korea, who are speaking English as their second language. And this is the accent that they will be forced to understand. And that's why I think that this outcome series is really, really great for young people and young adults. Right, okay, so let's just move on. I've told you about grammar, about listening, about speaking, about my outcome section, which is self-assessment piece that you can use with your students, and I really encourage you to. And then afterwards, we have this writing section that Glenn was really, really excited about.
Very exciting, yes.
Yeah, it's great. I have to say it's great. It's been changed a little bit, I think, for the better. There's speaking activity, there's useful language that students can use. All those writing exercises are designed so that students would write meaningful text that they can also use if they're trying to pass different exams. Lots of vocabulary, but also a practice. So this is a very practical section that you can use. And as we said, it's been moved from the back of the book into the ending of the unit. I think every 2 units there's a writing section. Am I right? I think I am.
Yeah, it's not, certainly not every unit.
Yeah,
yeah, I think, yeah, you're right. Writing 1 is after unit 2, exactly. So it's every 2 units.
Every 2 units you have a writing section. So if you have 12 units in every outcomes book, you get 6 writing sections. I guess I'm right. Math is not my strong side, so if I'm wrong, just correct me.
We're English teachers, not maths teachers.
No, unfortunately, no. Okay, but if we do not have writing section, we have something else, and that would be but first, we have the brand new video section that Hugh was also mentioning. I hope you remember that. And in Outcomes second edition, it was traditional video section where we had pieces of National Geographic documentaries along with different videos. In the third edition, we have a different approach. We have 2 videos in every section, but they're not about documentaries, they're about real life. So this first one is about understanding people with different accents. So again, we come back to this multicultural approach. And this is the videos in which people are talking about the different subjects. Okay, usually 2 or 3 people discussing the matter. You have a comprehension activity, but also this close look into the accents. The other video, on the other hand, is about developing conversations. So students have the opportunity to see a model conversation, but later they can work on with, or they can try to redo in pairs or in different scenarios, along with some conversation practice. So it's been slightly changed, I think, for the better, because I guess this gives students more opportunities to listen to the real life language. What do you think, Glenn?
No, absolutely, and that's so important. And also this section where they have, connected speech and fast speech, so important, because English language, it's so connected, and sometimes it's so difficult for students to actually hear words connected together. So focusing on that as well. For example, exercise 8 in developing conversation, FS, as you mentioned, fast speech. So yeah, I think that's great. So no, I mean, you're right. I think the way it's laid out and the content and everything about it is, it's definitely a plus point. And I hope teachers won't bypass, because I know in the past sometimes with the second edition, sometimes they did sort of skip, myself included, sometimes skip the video section, and I hope we won't be doing that this time.
Yeah, I hope so too. Mostly because I have a video section tip straight from Hugh. So maybe this is the tip that you're going to take and use it. Okay, so again, Hugh, Della, especially for you. Now, I hope I'm going to pull this off right, because it's the same video. So I hope it's going to work. But as promised, a video tip from Hugh. Go on.
It would actually be based on an idea that we use in the video spreads, where after watching some people doing one of the conversation practice activities that students themselves have already done, we then encourage students just to redo the task themselves. And this is something that any teacher can do with any speaking activity. You can basically get your students to redo a speaking activity in the next lesson. And I think the important thing is to give feedback at each stage. So students try a task, you give them some feedback, you help them to say a few things better, you point out ways in which they could have improved their communication, any problems. Next lesson, you say, okay, let's go back, let's do it again. If you have any students who say, oh, we've done that already, just tell them, yeah, this time you're going to do it better. Have a quick look at the feedback I gave you. Okay, try to put some of that into practice. And then crucially, you give extra feedback on the second attempt. And I know for myself as a language learner, this repetition and layering of experience is really crucial. Hope that helps and hope you enjoy the series, and very much look forward to seeing some of you somewhere down the line in 2024.
Yep.
And
no, Hugh, go away. Okay. Sorry, too many clicks here. It's not so easy to master everything here. Okay, so that was Hugh's tip about using this conversation development section in the video. Let's get back here for a second to show you the last section that we have, grammar and vocabulary revision. It is strictly exam type page full of activities that your students can use, but I think it's also very valuable for those who really want to sit their exams soon. So for some of you, it may simply be just an opportunity to practice all the material that we covered during the unit, and for others, it can be exam type practice training, whatever that's going to be. Not a huge fan, to be honest, but for some reason my students find it very soothing to have this section that they know very well from the students' book at school. So I usually end up doing it anyway. What about you, Glenn?
Yeah, I mean, I always set the review section for homework, maybe the lesson before we do a unit test, just to consolidate all the content from that unit. But yeah, I'm not a major fan of them myself, but I suppose there's a time and place for them. They are quite handy, I suppose, as well sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I think pretty much this is it. We went through the whole unit of Outcomes Third Edition. Right after that, we have Unit 3, which we're not going to cover. We have to trust us that this whole book is really great, filled with great content and amazing stuff. Let me show you 2 or 3 things that should really grab your attention as well. As you know, on your Spark platform, you have lots of different materials for teachers, teachers book included. And now, Hugh and Andrew really took it to the next level, because here you can find lots of very useful tips that they're including about presenting grammar, about dividing students in pairs, and also they've included something called Teacher Development section. And this is quite great. I'll try to find it quickly, because yeah, this is it. Because this is a bank of different skills that the teacher should have and should possess. And they're giving quite interesting advice on how to do different things in your class, how to give instructions, how to approach the vocabulary, how to organize your class, how to give feedback, how to drill for pronunciation, how to what? Let me find something interesting. Oh, this one's nice. How to feedback on content, language, and errors. So something that is really difficult for a lot of teachers, especially those who just begin their teaching careers. So this is something that you're going to find in the teacher's book, along with lots of additional materials. Here you can see a couple of interesting worksheets. They're really great. Usually they're very communicative in their style. So you may really, really expect your students to talk a lot. And this is what we usually hear, that outcomes really gives you outcomes. And that is something that you can really count on if you're choosing to use this this book. Any questions to us, because we're here almost for an hour.
I'm looking at the chats. Yeah, quite interesting talking about what's going to happen to the second edition in Poland. Well, it's going to be third edition, I think, from 2024.
That's right. Right now we have 2 levels available to you. It's outcomes pre-intermediate and outcomes upper intermediate, and we're expecting the rest of them to be available to you in February, I guess. But still, there's some time to transition into third edition. I would recommend everyone to do it, especially that if you transition, you'll be having access to Spark, which is our platform that really makes teachers' life easier. If you have any questions, we'll be more than happy to answer them. We're here for you, so if you have anything that we can help you with, we'll be probably delighted. If not, then I can share Glenn's teaching plan. Oh, there it is. You can either scan the code, or you can simply copy this bit.ly address, and you'll be able to download the whole presentation. Before I ask Glenn to say a couple of words about it, I'll just have one remark, very important one. Please make sure you download everything. You should have 3 files: presentation, teachers tips, and students version. Okay, you need 3 files. Make sure you download all of them. So Glenn, a few words about your teaching plan. I know that you've said something before, but maybe once again.
Well, thanks. I mean, one of the joys about outcomes is you can kind of just teach from the book. I don't know if I should say that. A couple of years ago, I did actually, because I do know Hugh personally, I actually sent him an email and I asked him if he's got any tips about teaching outcomes for my teachers. And he said, Glenn, just teach it as it is. Just teach it as it is prescribed in the course book. And that's kind of true, that you can, use outcomes without much needing to adapt.
Yeah, true.
But, the lesson plan that I have created does adapt it a bit. I mean, obviously, we are using the reading, but as I mentioned, the reading's been turned into a jigsaw activity. There's a fun sort of taboo activity right at the beginning of the lesson to activate the students' schematic knowledge about the content. In this case, it's talking about festivals and carnivals. They're going to be in A-B pairs. One half will be watching a video, which we've included a link, about carnivals and festivals, and the other student has to explain what's happening in the video without using taboo words, and one of the taboo words is carnival. So they can't use carnival, but they have to try to explain what's happening, which is a good challenge, and I think that's the thing, trying to challenge the students, keep them interested, engaged. What you don't want is students who are not challenged, because they will be bored, they will switch off, and be demotivated as well. So I think challenging students, keeping on their toes is always a good way. So yeah, so we've got a few things like that. There's also a little game again, where they have to, they're given the words which are in the text, and they have to try to work out the meaning of the words, but they're not allowed to use a dictionary. They've got a strict time limit of 5 minutes to do that, with a countdown clock. And things like this, and of course, a lot of the book will be the same. I mean, the speaking questions are still the same and things like this, but we've created lots of slides. Thanks to also my colleague, as I mentioned, Paul. He's created a PowerPoint for you guys. So yeah, as Ola said, there's the lesson plan, there's the PowerPoint. Yeah, I'm a big fan of using PowerPoints in class as well, because it always gives like a signpost, bit of a focal point to what, what's happening in the lesson, So
It's
yeah,
so much easier to manage, right? And for
definitely.
those students who's struggling, it's so much easier. Yeah. Okay. So I hope you're going to enjoy the lesson plan that Glenn has prepared for you. Please download it. We really love watching the numbers getting higher and higher and higher. And this is something that we at teamNGL really love checking out. If you have any questions, okay, Olga's asking about vocabulary builders and grammar worksheets. Yes, they are available on Spark to be downloaded. Plus, there are some extra activities, grammar on the go, vocabulary on the go, that are included in Spark for students' use. So there's actually a lot of things for students to practice. Just in short, because I think that we're going to wrap up, right? It's been more than an hour. I think that we've said everything that we really wanted to. If you have any further questions, feel free to contact our representatives, Przemek, Asia, Janusz for language schools, and Adrian for universities. They will be more than happy to answer to all your questions. Of course, you can also ask me for something if it's something that I can help you with. You can also leave the comment here under this video. We'll try to resolve any issues or any faults that you may have. Okay, and so I think that this is the moment that we say goodbye, don't we?
Yes. Well, thank you very much. And also do comment about my lesson. I'd love to know what you think about it.
Right. Okay. So listen, it's been a great pleasure talking to you, Glenn. Thank you so much for accepting.
Thank you. Thank you as well, Ola. It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Yes, I hope you guys enjoyed spending this evening with us. And yeah, let's just go before they change their minds, and let's just go before us. So thank you very much. Have a lovely evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.